Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Patriot's History. I'm Larry Swikart. I'm reading through Patriot's History of the United States, adding commentary and notes and new sources and discussions. As always, I urge you to get the 15th anniversary edition of Patriot's History of the United States. Now, you can have an older edition, but if you're going back to the 2004 hardcover edition, it's going to be substantially different. Some of the headers will be different. All of the pages will be different. So if possible, see if you can get the 15th anniversary edition. This is brought to you by the wildworldofhistory.com, my website, where I have full curricula in U.S. and world history. These include teacher's guide, student guide, tests, a built-in AP track, and me teaching everything in video, 22 units for Patriot's History corresponding to the 22 chapters of Patriot's History, and 15 for the world history class. And these are sometimes a little bit longer, which is why there are fewer lessons and fewer videos. They're just bigger. All of these are fully downloadable. You use them as you download them as you need them, and they're yours to keep. There's no license to expire. So if you don't get through the courses in a year, each one is designed to be a year-long course. No big deal. You can come back to it later. You can share it with as many kids as you have. I ask if you go with more than 5 kids, like a co-op, you buy an extra copy of the curriculum for every 5 students, but we're on the honor system, so I can't police that. Also, all the images that I use in my video instruction, you have access to every one of those and can download those. Now, unless you're really weird, you don't want to download a picture of James Monroe, but you might want to download some of the maps and charts, which can be a little bit difficult, and take some time to look over them. All right. Okay. Oh, yeah, one more thing. I'm in the process of making Patriot's History into a video series. So go to the wildworldofhistory.com. There's a button up there, and click the button and watch the trailer. You're going to love it. The music was performed by Michael W. Smith, who gave us his music, and we'll score the whole thing if we get funds to make it. 4 minutes of American history. It's American history in 4 minutes. There's only 2 spoken lines in the entire 4 minutes. It is moving. You're going to need a hanky by the time you're done. It's just beautifully done. We want to make that into a John Adams or a Sons of Liberty type show, and I need your help to do it. So if you like it and you'll love it, buy me a coffee, or buy me 5, or buy me 100, whatever you think is worthwhile in helping advance this to video form. Now, we on our side of the political aisle get all sorts of heat because of the culture wars, and Hollywood controls the culture and blah, blah, blah. Well, here's your chance to help change that. It's one step at a time. This is an important step. Help us out. All right, let's get started. Last time, by the way, I'm reading on page 69. Last time, we looked at the role of the Navigation Acts and mercantilism in perpetrating and causing the American Revolution. And we looked at how the colonists came to view taxes as impediments on their liberty, infringements on their liberty, unless they were allowed to vote for these taxes themselves, which of course they were not allowed to do. So I'm going to pick up on 69 here, and then we're going to go into a discussion of Adam Smith. Dissatisfaction with the Navigation Acts themselves only reflected the deeper changes in the economic thought being developed at exactly the same time by Scottish professor Adam Smith, who had formulated his theory of moral sentiments in 1754. Arguing that men naturally had a self-interest based on information that only they could know, likes, dislikes, personal foibles, Smith had laid the groundwork for his more famous book, The Wealth of Nations, which would appear concurrent with the Declaration of Independence. Smith reformulated economics around individual rights rather than the state's needs. His concepts fit with Thomas Jefferson's like a hand in a glove. Indeed, it would be Alexander Hamilton and some of the Federalists who would later clash repeatedly with Smith's individual-oriented economic principles. While the wealth of nations in no way influenced the writings of Adams or others in 1776, the ideas of personal economic liberty had already seeped into the American psyche, almost as if Adams and Jefferson had read Smith extensively. Thus, at the very time the British started to enforce a creaky, antiquated system that had started its drift into obsolescence, Americans, particularly seaboard merchants, started to flex their entrepreneurial muscles in Smith's new free market concepts. Equally important, Americans had started to link economic rights and political rights in the most profound ways. At accelerating rates, the colonists used the term slavery and enslavement in relation to British government policies. If the king could assault citizens' liberties when it came to trade, how long before he issued edicts on political speech or even religion? Now, let me take just a few minutes and talk about Adam Smith. Adam Smith was not a professor of economics. He was a professor of moral philosophy. That's really important. It's critical that you understand capitalism was a moral system first and foremost. It was built on a notion of morality, okay? And so Smith said that men, that's the generic term for all people back then, so just get used to it and don't get your panties in a wad, as my mother used to say, that men operated out of self-interest. Now, this is not selfishness. I know the Marxists, the leftists, Howard Zinn, all the rest of them want you to think that capitalism is selfish. You know, Professor Schweikart, capitalism is so selfish and socialism is just so unselfish. No, just the opposite. I'll show you how. Capitalism is based on self-interest. Self-interest is information. It's information that only you have or can possess. You like blackberry jam, but strawberries make you gag. You're fine with sliced tomatoes in a salad, but you can't stand stewed tomatoes. You like to wear 2 pairs of socks in your gym shoes to just make your feet feel better. There's all sorts of stuff like that. I know you'll think this is really weird, but hey, I'm not afraid. I'll open up. As some of you may know, back in the early 1990s, I was an aerobics instructor. I did high-low impact, like Jamie Lee Curtis. I taught high-low impact with my wife, and I both taught classes. And we taught at a Vic Tanny gym that had an aerobics room, which was carpet laid over cement. That's terrible on your joints, on your knees, everything else, right? And so that's right off the bat, that's bad. But I learned to mitigate that a little bit with the shoes that I got. And I found that the best shoes I could use on carpet overlaying cement, which I wouldn't use on a wooden floor, which is how most aerobic gym floors were, was women's Reebok shoes. So I get a big old pair of 9.5 women's Reebok shoes, and they were really soft and flexible so that they didn't stick in that carpet, so you wouldn't turn your ankle all the time. That's something nobody could possibly know about me, right? Nobody knows your own likes or dislikes, your own foibles. You might like country music, but you just can't stand Willie Nelson. You might love rock and roll, but you don't like the Beatles. Whatever it is, these are internal things that you've developed and built up over your lifetime. And you know what? No one else knows that. Oh, your wife, your husband, your brother, your sister, your mother, your best friend, they might know some of these, even many of these, but not all of them. Nobody can know all of them. You have too many different tastes, too many different preferences. Here's another one. I like to read written books. I hate reading on screen. Yes, I have to do it for my work, but I don't like it. And so I will always buy a written book when I can. But I understand it. I have a lot of readers of my books who say, first thing it says, does that come in Kindle? Why? They travel a lot and they don't want the weight and cumbersomeness of a book when they're traveling. They just want a screen. I get it. Okay. These are things that you and only you can know about you. It's self-interest. It's not selfishness. So no government board, no panel, no group of experts can possibly know this about millions and millions of people. They couldn't even get some of the broadest likes and dislikes right. I mean, if you ask a government bureaucrat what people like, they're going to tell you what their close circle of friends like. There's a famous example. I think the woman's name is Pauline Kael, Kael. I think that's how you say it. At any rate, when Richard Nixon won in a landslide in 1972, took every state except one in the District of Columbia, just crushed George McGovern. Pauline Kael was just flabbergasted. She's from New York. She says, I don't understand it. None of my friends voted for Nixon. Well, yeah. See? All right. So self-interest. That is why no bureau can make good economic decisions, because no bureau knows what people like and don't like. Now, here's another thing to consider. I'm not wearing a tie today, but say I'm wearing a tie. Okay. Let's say before I bought that tie, somebody polled me, did a poll. Hey, Larry, you prefer red ties or blue ties? I like blue ties. They mark that down. That shows up in the poll. Americans favor blue ties 3-1. Only problem is I go in the store and go, I really like that red tie. So I buy the red tie with my time, talent, and energy, otherwise known as money. We've been through this in a previous lesson, but I need to emphasize this. Physical money, dollar bills, $20 bills, checks are physical manifestations of your time, your talent, and your energy. So when you're exchanging money for a pizza, for a book, for a car, you're exchanging your time, your talent, your energy for someone else's time, talent, and energy. And the way you make that work is through divisible, portable stuff called money. If you can't carry it around, if you can't divide it into smaller amounts, it's useless. Okay. So here's my point. You cannot judge things by polls, whether they're economic things or anything else. Currently, we're going through a big brouhaha with Anheuser-Busch and a beer called Bud Light, because Bud Light used a transgender spokesman to push the beer. And the drinkers of Bud Light reacted to that with an explosion. And Anheuser-Busch lost $7 billion in the first 3 weeks because they just wouldn't even drink it. All right. Well, you could have done a poll. Do you plan to boycott Bud Light? And you might have only had 30% of people say, yeah, I will. And they go, aha, the boycott won't work. And yet when they go in to actually buy it because they're paying for it with their time, their talent, and their energy, it's a different story. Okay. So the point is, government bureaucrats, whether they're in England working for the king or whether they're in Washington, D.C. working for some bureau, they don't know what your self-interest is. That's not selfishness. That is information that only you have, that only you could possibly know. All right. Second point about wealth of nations. So Smith goes on, Theory of Moral Sentiments comes out in 1754. Excuse me. Smith goes on to write The Wealth of Nations in 1776. Now, take a look at the full title of the book, The Wealth of Nations. It's called An Inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. An inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. Okay, the causes of what? The wealth of nations. Let's flip that. It's not an inquiry into the nature and causes of the what of nations. What's the opposite of wealth? Poverty. It's not an inquiry into the nature and causes of the poverty of nations. Why? Smith didn't care why nations were po. We got enough po nations and po people out there. We don't need no more po. What we need is for the po to be rich, not the rich to be po, right? How do you get people to quit being poor? And this is what Smith was concerned with. So first he says people are going to follow their own self-interest. But then he comes to this. He says, you know, your passion may be that you love to bake bread, but you're a lousy baker. Now, you can bake bread and no one will buy it and you can starve. Or you can do something that you're really good at. Maybe you're a plumber and you're a really good plumber. So maybe you're a plumber and you decide, in order to pay the bills, I've got to be a plumber. I'll bake bread on the weekends. I'll do it for my own enjoyment. Okay, young people, this is really important. There's a word called work. Work is not play. Play is what you do when you're done working. Play is what you do when you picked up your toys. Play is what you do when you finished your chores. Play is what you do when you're not working. Our society in the last 30 years has developed this whole notion that work is supposed to be play. You should love your work. Your work should be your passion. You should do what makes you happy. I'm sorry, young people, listen to me, read my lips. Most of you are not going to do what you love to do. Now, you may not hate it. You may find aspects of your work that are enjoyable, but your work for 99.9% of you is not going to be play. If I could right now, and I'm a very accomplished, not to pat myself on the back, but I'm a very accomplished professor and writer. I've had 3 best-selling books, 1 #1 New York Times bestseller. I made 2 movies. But if I could have had my way, I would have played rock and roll drums my whole life. But I wasn't good enough. I was good, but not good enough. When I hear really good drummers, like the guy who plays for Styx, or old drummers like Gene Krupa or Louis Bellson, I go, Larry, you made the right choice. You weren't good enough, but I'm a heck of a writer. Okay. So if I had a set of drums here and writing stuff here, I choose to go over and play drums all the time. That's play. But work is different than play. Work is what allows you to play. Now, sometimes, for example, Rush Limbaugh ended up being able to work at what he loved, which was radio broadcasting. Michael Jordan got to make a career out of playing basketball, which he loved to do. Okay. But you can see, how about this one? You can see by the number of professional football, baseball, and basketball players how hard it is for them to retire. Why? Because they're doing what they love. And now they're going to have to quit doing what they love and do something called work. But then again, here and back to my point. How many NFL players are there out of all the people in college football that try out for these teams? Tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. How many NBA players are? Each NBA team has what? Something like 11, 12 players. You got a few hundred players who are capable of playing in the NBA. Everybody else as good as they are as basketball players, as much as they want to play basketball, have to go to work. Okay, so this is very important. So Smith says, when you get that into your head, that you're going to have to work, you find the thing that you can do that is better than anybody else. No, it may not be the best in the world. You may not be the #1 bread maker in all the world, but you're better at bread making than you are as a plumber. Or you may not be the best drummer in all the world, but you're a better drummer than you are a writer. Find what you do best, and that is what Smith called your comparative advantage. That is, over all other people, when we average it out, you're going to be better at bread making than 95% of them. But if you insist on being a plumber, you're only better than 10% of them. Okay. So when you find your comparative advantage, you will stick to it and perfect it and be really, really good. And then you will exchange things in the marketplace for people who have different comparative advantages. I'll tell you right now, folks, you do not want me even nailing 2 boards together. I almost failed shop class and metal shop class in high school, wood shop and metal shop. I was terrible. I could give you horror stories. Some of the things that I made, they were abominations unto God. They were just horrible. You don't want me doing any carpentry work, any plumbing work, any electrical work. Even if I could do it, I'm just not skilled. I don't see it. It doesn't come together very well. I'm not a good mathematician. You sure don't want to see me play golf. But I can write. I can research. I can play drums pretty good. I can make a pretty good movie. So I found my areas of comparative advantage. So this leads to what Smith calls the division of labor. Remember, we talked about this back with Plymouth. And Plymouth had a division of labor in 1630, which is one of the hallmarks of capitalism, that people start to do what they are best at, and then you exchange with other people what you do best with what they do best. And not only does everybody get different products, but your stuff is made by the very best that there is. Okay. I mean, there are bands that I listen to or get their stuff on iTunes, and I go, wow, these guys are so good. I could never do that. But they couldn't write Patriot's History of the United States to save their lives. Okay. So comparative advantage leads to division of labor, which leads to productivity increases, because now very few people are doing stuff they're bad at, like making bread, and they're doing stuff they're good at, like being plumbers or writers or whatever it is they're good at. So everybody is advancing society at the same time, excuse me, because they're doing what they're best at. That's what you want, a society where everybody is doing their very best at what they're very best at. That's Smith. That's the wealth of nations. So why is it unselfish? Smith says that to know whether or not you're good at something, like making these glasses, okay, it's not enough for you to just do something you want to do. Me play drums, you play golf, whatever. You have to know that it's benefiting society, that it's benefiting somebody else, that somebody else wants what you have, what you can make, what you can do, what you can say, what you can write, what you can sing. Somebody else must want that. So, ready for this? Hang on to your seats, buckle in, get your airbag ready. Capitalism begins with you asking the question, have you served your fellow man today? Begins with you seeking to answer that question. Have you served your fellow man today? Every day, capitalism says, Larry, what have you done? Have you served your fellow man today? And I go to my sales numbers at Penguin. Yeah, I think so. Looks like plenty of people think they're being served by my books today. Okay. You're a auto mechanic, and the line of cars outside for you to work on is just stacking up because people heard you're really good. Have you served your fellow man? Absolutely. Okay. What have you done to serve your fellow man today? That's the first question of capitalism. Did you catch that? You have to serve others. What did Jesus say? You must first serve. Right? Capitalism is about serving others. Yeah, but what about money? What about money? Okay, hang on. I'm getting there. I don't have a dollar bill to wave in front of you. But so this voice out of the sky says, Billy, have you served your fellow man today? You go, yeah, I've served my fellow man. I painted this picture. And the voice comes back and says, prove it. Well, I painted the picture. No. That's not proof of anything. Prove that you've served your fellow man. Well, how do I do that? You got to sell it. Somebody has to want to buy it. Remember, money is what? Time, talent, and energy. Somebody else has to be willing to give you their time, talent, and energy for your time, talent, and energy, or you haven't served anybody. Okay? Capitalism is essentially selfless. It begins with the question, have you served your fellow man today? And then it's not enough for you to answer it yourself. You have to prove it by the fact that other fellow men will give you their own time, talent, and energy in the form of money for what it is that you made, produced, sang, wrote, painted, whatever it is. That's how you know that you've served your fellow man. Now, what about volunteer efforts? You know, at my old university, University of Dayton, they used to have a service requirement. I'm sorry, folks. If it's a requirement, it's not service. Service, to be service, must be 100% voluntary. It must be totally uncoerced. In fact, I would even argue it can't even be mentally coerced through a bunch of advertisements and shaming. Well, have you worked at the soup kitchen for the church yet? You need to go on a mission to India. That's not service. Service is done out of the heart because you want to do it. That's true service. So I used to ask my students, so you say, oh yeah, I serve my fellow man. I go read to old folks down at the old folks home 3 days a week. Great, wonderful. Mm-hmm. How do you know you're serving? Oh, they tell me. They say, they compliment me and say, what a good job I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You ever stick around and listen to what they say when you're gone? I couldn't wait for that girl to get out of here. I need to go take my pills. She better nothing else around here at that time, but that ain't very good. I mean, you don't know if you're serving them or not. How do you know that you're serving somebody? Money. If they're paying you, you're definitely serving them, or they wouldn't pay you. So I'm not saying don't volunteer. I'm not saying don't do stuff for others, not at all. Bible requires us to do that. What I am saying is be careful, because you tend to get a fat head because you think you're serving and you don't really know if you are or not because you ain't getting paid. All you can do is do it free, hope that they appreciate it. But if they had a budget to pay you, you would know very quickly if you were really serving them, because if you were really serving them, you'd be a part of that budget. Okay. So have you served your fellow man today? Prove it. Now, let me jump forward real quick. So we'll cover this again later. I want to jump forward to Karl Marx and socialism. And I'll show you later, Marx did not invent socialism. It was invented by a Scotsman, Robert Owen. We'll get into him because he plays a role in America. He comes over to America. He coins the term socialism. Socialism is based on one theory alone. Okay, now this is very important because if you want to know if something's a free market system or a socialist system, all you have to do is get down to this one nub. And that is socialism is based on something called the labor theory of value. Labor theory of value. Now, get ready. I mean, this is really complex. I don't want to make this too hard, but so what's a labor theory of value? All wealth, all value comes from physical work only. That's it. Only labor makes value. What? Wait a minute. So you're telling me that out of this whole book, almost 1,000 pages, the only value in it is what I actually took physically writing it? That all the ideas, all the thoughts, all the rearranging stuff, all the editing, all the artwork on the cover, all the sales, all the merchandising, none of that's valuable? Mm-hmm. Telling me Michael Jordan's basketball playing wasn't valuable. Telling me that the Doors and their music wasn't valuable. They weren't working. They weren't engaged in physical labor. Telling me that all the bankers, all the managers in any company, all the thinkers, all the artists, all the talent, everybody on American Idol, they're not valuable. No, because they're not working. They're not doing physical labor. See how incredibly stupid that is? If I had Marx, I'd just slap him like that. That's just so stupid, it's just beyond contempt. That only physical work is valuable. But that's a labor theory of value. So now let me show you in a quick example how incredibly stupid that is. So if you believe the labor theory of value, we should be able to take you out in a helicopter over the Sahara Desert, push you out and get you down low so you don't hurt yourself, push you out. You got a pick and shovel, and you start digging a hole in the Sahara Desert for 8 hours. You work all 8 hours. Maybe you don't even take a lunch break. Do 9 hours. And you're a good hole digger. Oh, it's a beautiful hole. And you've got all these sandcastle molds that you made, that you brought some sandcastles. The end of the day, according to Marx, you should stick your hand out and somebody should put money in it. Because you worked. You engaged in labor for 8 hours. Now, come on. Why will that not happen? Let me go back to our earlier discussion of capitalism. Who did you serve? Nobody. Nobody wanted that stupid hole. Nobody asked you to make it. Nobody will pay you for making it because nobody wants it. Now, let's assume that some governments, like the American government, has a regulated wage law where you have to get paid for your work, whether you create value or not. Let's call it a minimum wage law. At the end of that 8-hour day, if this is in place, you stick out your hand and somebody has to put money in. Somebody is forced to put money in your hand. Nobody wanted it. Nobody asked for it, but somebody was forced to put money in your hand. This is a socialist society, right? Who was benefited by that transaction? Well, I was. I got paid for doing nothing, digging a hole that nobody wanted, nobody cared about. I got paid for that. Yep. Socialism is 100% selfish. Because under socialism, you get paid for doing stuff that nobody wants. Your value is not what you do for your fellow man. It's what you do for yourself. Socialism begins with me, me, me. Capitalism begins with what does somebody else want? What do they need? And notice this about capitalism, folks. Smith wasn't concerned with why you benefited your fellow man. Maybe you're really greedy and you just want to get rich. You know, John Jacob Astor was like that. He was one of our few American entrepreneurs, truly great, who gave almost nothing away. He could be called greedy, but you know what? He created an incredible fur trade that benefited the entire Northeast. He was one of the first ones to build low-rent apartment buildings in New York City so that people who didn't have a lot of money could live there. He didn't want to serve his fellow man out of the goodness of his heart, but he ended up doing it nonetheless. Why? Because that's how you get rich. That's how you get money. But in socialism, who do you serve? You serve you. It's a selfish system. Capitalism is fundamentally unselfish, regardless of your motivations. We don't care about motivations. Motivations are meaningless. I mean, I hope you have good motivations, but if you're selling me these glasses and your motivation is to get rich, I don't care. I don't care if that's your motivation or your motivation is to give people the best eyesight they could possibly have. What do I want? I just want good glasses. See? So by serving your fellow man, capitalism requires you to at least think about and take into account other people's wants and desires. Given it shall be given unto you. With socialism, it's take and it shall be given unto you. And that's the difference between socialism and capitalism. One is fundamentally unselfish, and one, socialism, is fundamentally selfish. We'll start next time with the Stamp Act of 1763. I hope, or 1765, sorry. I hope this was useful for you today. I think it's one of the most important things young people can learn is the real difference between capitalism and socialism. Remember, check out the Wild World of History website. There's all sorts of blogs, all sorts of free articles, 1 to 2 pages, the Winged Hussars, UFOs in history, the creation of the Barbie doll. I mean, all sorts of amazing stuff there. Was Robert E. Lee a great general? Things like that. And then I have a VIP service at the website also, again, that you want to check out. It has ongoing lesson programs in Reagan, the American president, enduring lessons on life and citizenship, and that capitalism lesson is one of them. The 1620 default, where you learn about why Plymouth and not Jamestown was the essence of American exceptionalism. And then I've got a short one called The Horrible History of Howard Zinn, and I'm adding new ones all the time. Plus, and this is really important for all you home educators, I've got 2.5 years of Wild Wednesday webcasts. Every Wednesday night, I do a different historical topic, and that's all in the recorded video library there. UFOs in history, the Crusades, Kennedy assassination history. I did a 3-week period on the war in the Pacific in World War II, one on CRT and diversity and all that 1619 project. Check it out and you know, see if you want to subscribe to the VIP on the Wild World of History site. And lastly, remember, look at the video that's up there. We're trying to make Patriots history into a video. You'll love it. It's going to be a great video, but I need your help. Buy Larry a copy. Buy Larry 10 copies or 50 copies, whatever moves you, but help us move this toward making a video series. All proceeds go to making the film. And I'll see you guys back here on Wednesday.